So they banned these peptides that we have here.
Correct.
And we're sat here 2 years after the ban, I believe, roughly 2 years after that ban.
Yeah.
And suddenly everybody's talking about peptides again.
Yes.
Why? What's going on?
So I think what we're seeing is the forbidden fruit effect, because this was banned and all of a sudden, oh, well, why'd they ban it? Well, they wouldn't have banned it if it weren't working, right? And we're also seeing the effect of TikTok and short form content being spread very rapidly, very virally. And that's been going on for 2 years now, combined with new emphasis from administration leadership and the HHS and RFK.
What is the most incredible impact that you've seen peptides create in a patient?
Oh my gosh, I have a best story for you. So one of the most frustrating things about my practice is treating infertility in young men that have significant metabolic dysfunction. These are young men that have a low sperm count, right? So they can't get pregnant because they just don't have the numbers to make it happen. And you're looking at them and they're morbidly obese, okay? They have high insulin resistance, all right, and their endocrine system has been damaged by that obesity. So they don't have low testosterone levels, and their brain is not making enough of the signals to stimulate their testicles. Now, we have medications that we can use to help stimulate that, to make more of that signal stimulate the testicles, right? But really what is eating at them, what is causing this is not that chemical imbalance. That's the symptom. It's not the problem, okay? And treating symptoms doesn't really get you very far. And so I would have patients that I would take care of and we would never see a significant improvement in their numbers because losing weight is really, really hard, regardless of all of the education and resources I try to give them. But now we have peptides in the form of GLP-1 drugs like semaglutide and trzepatide. And I just saw a patient last week who increased his sperm count 10 times over and is now in a normal range because he's lost 100 pounds due to using trzepatide, exercising, and improving his diet. And he has totally changed his life.
And that started with a peptide?
It started with a peptide.
So we've got lots of peptides on the table in front of you.
Yes.
We will go into them individually, but just can you give me a high-level view of the types of areas in our health and life that these peptides can help with? So we've talked there about infertility.
Correct.
As a downstream consequence of the weight loss and fixing the metabolic health. What other parts of the body do peptides touch?
The best way to think about it is like this. So peptides are almost like an app on your phone. So imagine before we had apps. Like I'm old enough to remember trying to log on and do my banking online before we had apps. And gosh, it was so painful, right? Like there were ways to accomplish things, but they were very inconvenient in a roundabout way. And now all of a sudden we have these apps on our phone that can do just about anything except fold your laundry, right? There's some limits to it, but I mean, really the sky's the limit from an electronic standpoint. And really, that's what peptides are. So the thing is that we have peptides that can help you lose weight, like the GLP-1 drugs. We have peptides that can improve skin quality, like GHK-Cu. We have peptides that can help heal your gut, like BPC-157, particularly effective in ulcerative colitis, which is something that's being investigated with the FDA's planned upcoming meeting on it. We also have peptides that can help with sleep and with recovering the gland in your brain that's responsible for melatonin and regulating your sleep-wake cycles. So the question isn't, what can peptides do? It's kind of, well, what can't they do? And if they can't do that yet, can we develop a peptide that can accomplish that task? And the answer is probably. And simultaneously, while there may be resistance from pharmaceutical industry in these peptides, the ones that we're most interested in right now, they have signed multi-billion-dollar deals with other pharmaceutical companies that are involved in peptide development aided by AI to try and fast track their own peptide products.
Interesting.
And so we are going to see exponentially more of these products come down the pipeline from pharmaceutical companies in the form of commercial products.
And it's worth saying that there was some significant news today.
Correct.
What happened today, but also what's going on? And just for anyone that doesn't know, it's April the 15th.
Yes. So today we got a press release from the FDA saying that in July, they are going to consider 7 peptides for removing from category 2 back to category 1.
Legalizing them.
Legalizing them, okay? And some of the heavy hitters from that list include BPC 157.
Which is the one we talked about to do with like repair and injury.
Absolutely. Okay. And then we have the brother to that, which is TB500, this vial over here. This improves blood flow to an injured area. You could think of this as sending the soldiers, as sending the cells that are required for rebuilding that tissue matrix that was damaged by a tear or a cut. All right. On top of that, we're also getting something called KPV, may not have it here, but that is another peptide that has been linked to angiogenesis and tissue repair. We're also getting MOTS-C, and some patients will call it exercise in a vial. It improves your VO2 max and your exercise tolerance and by regulating the energy pathway, basically making more ATP, the energy that we all use to move. It makes more of that available. All right. We're also going to get DSIP, epithalon, and Cmax, which are all peptides that affect cognitive function. So improving thinking, like Cmax is a great option for that. And then DSIP and epithalon both have roles in regulating sleep and recovery.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty wild.
And I've got to say, so some of them are becoming legalized, but even the ones that aren't legal right now, a lot of people are taking them anyway.
Correct.
So my question is, how are people getting them? Listen, I don't want to promote illegal drugs here. This is not that kind of shit. No. But I just want to know what's going on.
No, this is important to talk about, right? Because we have to understand like what's going on in the marketplace. The moment that these drugs were banned or these medications were banned in 2023, it was kind of like the United States experiment at banning alcohol. It didn't go very well, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the mob came around and we started, seeing unregulated saloons and unregulated alcohol production, and it was contaminated with all the stuff that you didn't want. And so we're like,
people are traveling.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, it's not a good idea, right? And so what happened is we banned these and the gray market stepped in. And so these are companies that will sell peptides that have on the label for research use only, all right? And the idea is that takes them out of the FDA's jurisdiction because they're not selling it for people to inject into themselves, out of the FDA's hands. I'm just creating a vial of this magical juice that you can use for your rat, okay? That's the idea. We all know that's not what's really happening. But because there isn't any quality control, it's kind of like getting gas station sushi. Like, yeah, you can do it, but you don't really know if it's sushi and it may not end very well for you. Yeah. And so, again, not saying that there aren't some people who have gotten good results with research use only peptides, but again, it's not standardized, which is why I think moving this back into the 503A compounding world is the best thing for everyone.
Which is the legal framework.
Correct.
Okay, so how does one take a peptide?
That's a great question. So what's interesting is that, as we mentioned, peptides are just made up of building blocks of amino acids. And, if you were to go make yourself a protein shake, what is that going to look like from a Lego standpoint? It just looks like this, a handful of Legos in your hand, right?
All sort of ground up.
All ground up in individual pieces, right? Okay. Well, the thing is that your gut is designed to break up any sort of protein that you ingest orally into these little pieces. Okay. And so if you were to say, I don't know, drink some of this TB500, your body wouldn't be able to tell the difference between that and a piece of chicken.
Because it would break it all apart.
It would break it all apart. Now, there are some very unique exceptions to that. There's a form of BPC 157 that actually is tolerated in the gut. But by and large, the overwhelming majority of these have to be injected either subcutaneously or into the muscle. And that's usually a preference.
Subcutaneous being my belly?
Just underneath the skin. As I tell patients, just pinch an inch, inject under the skin. We do that for a lot of other medications as well.
Is that what this is?
Yeah, so this is a prescription Mounjaro pen. So Mounjaro is the brand name for tirzepatide, all right? Tirzepatide being the leading GLP-1 product right now from Lilly. So this produces more weight loss per milligram than any other product that we've got out right now.
Is this the mechanism in which people inject peptides?
No, a little bit different.
A little different.
This is an auto-injector pen. And so what you do is you're able to actually ratchet the dose there on the right side, and then you pinch an inch in your skin and then push it up against, and it'll auto-deploy. And so there's nothing that you need to do. You don't have to learn how to drop medication and inject. Whenever you're administering peptides at home, especially for patients that have obtained them from research use only markets, they usually come in just little vials that need to be drawn up with a needle, okay? Now, the benefit of that is that you can do custom dosing, right? But the drawback is that, well, you have to know how to calculate that and put it together. This may be the most controversial thing we have on this table. And by pharma's estimate, it might be the most dangerous thing to their entire business model, because this is trzepatide, the exact same thing that you had in that pen. But this is made by a high-quality 503A compounding pharmacy. And the reason why this is so controversial right now is because it offers an incredible amount of flexibility, because what you have in your hand there is very standardized, and you administer it once a week because that's what's approved by insurance.
This is like the Ozempic thing everyone's been talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. But think of that as paint by numbers. Okay. You are this section is this color. This section is that color. All right. Think of this as
the thing you've got in your hand
right now. Yeah, exactly. Just a vial of trzepatide as having infinite permutations and dosing ability, because you can draw this up with a small syringe and do microdosing. So instead of one large dose once a week, because what many patients will experience is they'll have a return of their hunger by the end of the week and they end up losing ground. You can actually, instead of doing a full dose once a week, you could do multiple mini doses throughout the week with this formulation and with this presentation of the medication. All right. But the challenge is that is the benefit that allows this to be compounded by compounding pharmacies, because they are able to provide something that is similar to what's in your hand, all right, but it offers more flexibility that may be the right choice for some patients. So personalization of medicine, okay? But the challenge is that if you spend however much money on this, you're not giving it to Lilly. And so as a result, we have seen an unprecedented crackdown in the United States from the FDA in trying to shut down compounding pharmacies and prevent them from making these medications, even though that ability to customize, the fact that this is not an exact copy of what's in your hand right now, should protect it under current legislation. But there's now enough pressure from the powers that be and from lobbyists from both Lilly and Novo Nordisk, which are the two companies that make the GLP-1 medications, that we're seeing Marty Makary, the FDA commissioner, has now tweeted more about cracking down on compounded GLP-1 medications than he's tweeted about diabetes or heart disease in his entire time in office.
And just so I understand, I want to play this back to you to make sure I understand.
Sure.
In my hand here, I have trzepatide on my left.
Yep.
And this is made by Lilly, which is
Correct.
a corporate company who've
Correct.
patented it so they can make lots of money from it.
Correct.
In my right hand, I have trzepatide.
Trzepatide with niacinamide.
With niacinamide.
Yep.
And this is not patentable.
So Lilly has a patent on the trzepatide molecule in that formulation in your hand. Mm-hmm. Okay. And if anyone violates a patent, that can be pursued in U.S. court.
Yeah.
Patent law, right? But what's interesting is that Lilly and Novo Nordisk know that that's different in your right hand. It doesn't look the same. You can dose it differently. And they know that if they were going to fight that in court, it would cost a lot of money and take a lot of time. So you know what's a lot easier? Calling your friend at the FDA and getting him to step on the competition so you don't have to. And then who's paying for that enforcement? It's not the lawyers that the pharma company is paying for. It's the taxpayer paying for the FDA through taxes.
And you seem to imply that this was actually better because you could take it in a more flexible dose. You could take a little bit, a lot. You can take it when you want, whereas this is kind of once a week.
Well, I mean, what is better, right? So I like this option for many of my patients because it's flexible, all right? So that is something that works for most patients, all right? But then again, this works great for patients too.
Okay.
But what you want is an ecosystem where you have choice so you can make the right choice for the right patient. For a lot of patients, they're going to do exceedingly well on this, and there's so much data to support that. But I also have a lot of patients who get really ill after they do a large dose of Mounjaro or of GLP-1 med. And if we take that same dose and we just cut it into multiple doses within a week, we can avoid those side effects.
So you've told me that these peptides we have on the table in front of us can improve your skin, weight loss, muscle, energy, chronic illnesses. You talked about the cognitive upsides, and you talk about it very passionately.
Yeah.
So one should ask you,
yeah.
Presumably you're taking some peptides.
I am, yeah.
Which ones do you take?
So I will tell you that as of right now, the only peptide I'm taking is a small dose of trzepatide. All right?
Which is the one we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because back a couple of months ago, I was probably close to about 240 or so. And I was into powerlifting, I still am. But, it's really great to be able to deadlift 500 pounds, but then stairs become really hard when you're trying to walk up. And you're like, I don't know. I kind of like being able to not take a break after 2 or 3 flights of stairs. And so I was like, okay, all right, longevity is a priority of mine. I'm going to slim down a little bit. I was like, let me just try this for a little bit. And what I found is that it is incredibly potent and at a very low dose, very, very tolerable.
Why don't you take some of the others?
Honestly, because right now there is not a legal framework for me to obtain them. And the truth is that I want to be an example for my patients. And that's why I'm out here advocating that we get access to these peptides in a legal, safe way again. All right. And because it's the best thing for everyone.
If they were legal, which ones might you consider?
Oh, man, I will tell you this. As some, I don't know how old you are, Stephen, but I'm
33.
in my 33? God bless you. I will tell you, once you get over 35, man, that is brutal, all right? I sleep on my neck in a wrong way, and I need a freaking brace for 2 weeks. And so as someone who spends a lot of time in the gym, working out, you start to accumulate all these little aches and pains. And so the idea of, for example, I have a very finicky right shoulder. If I try to do a really heavy bench and I haven't warmed up, I can tweak this, and it takes me out of the fight for at least a month, okay? And I have to do other things. I would have killed at various points in time over the past 2 years to have had BPC and TB500 to hopefully speed that sort of healing, all right? Also, for example, I suffer from really bad rosacea. It flares constantly.
What's that?
So just a redness of the face, okay? That, it makes me look like I'm sunburned. And then I come in the office on a Tuesday, and then my staff's like, oh my gosh, you go out in the yard and do some work this week? I'm like, it's just my face. For example, that's something that a lot of people have reported benefits from GHKCU from. So again, another compound, another peptide that could be beneficial for a patient like myself.
What about muscle mass and gaining muscle?
Yeah, so that is an interesting misnomer because that has been a common selling point that you'll see on social media. But as of right now, the only peptide that you might construe that way would be this guy right here in my hand, IGF-1 LR3, okay? Now, IGF-1 LR3 is basically the longer lasting version of IGF-1, which is the downstream effect of growth hormone. I'm sure you've heard of bodybuilders taking growth hormone to increase size and lose fat. In higher doses, it can help contribute to muscle mass, all right? But truthfully, if you're trying to gain significant muscle mass, this is not the way to do it. And so right now, one of the things that peptides can't do for you is independently put on significant amounts of lean mass.
You still have to go to the gym.
You still have to go to the gym, believe it or not. And guess what?
Well, that's the end of the podcast.
Yeah, I tell you, but something that blows my mind is that I have so many patients that think that they can just take testosterone and just put on muscle naturally. And it doesn't work that way. You might get a tiny little bit, but you still have to have stimulus. You still have to get in the gym. You still have to put the work in. And so I tell patients that I am not a replacement for a personal trainer. I'm your doctor. You also need your personal trainer. And most of you need a nutritionist, man. And so I'm lucky to work with some great people in the community who partner with me on that. But, it's a full court press when you're trying to get people to, live the highest quality life.
What about some of these metabolic disorders and diseases in terms of insulin? Resistance. People on the Diary of a CEO, the audience, are very interested to learn about insulin. I see that a lot in the comment section and a lot of the data.
Yeah.
So if someone's struggling with their insulin levels or their glucose response, how does these peptides help?
Honestly, the best peptides for that right now are the GLP-1 drugs, okay, hands down, because what you're doing is you are slowing gastric emptying, and so you have a slower absorption of that bolus of food that you've eaten, so your glucose doesn't spike. And so as a result, that increases insulin sensitivity significantly. Now, again, you have to be careful about what peptide you're using for what. A lot of these peptides that boost growth hormone and boost, let's say, IGF-1, those can actually increase serum glucose. And that may not be what you want if you are someone that is trying to work on your insulin sensitivity.
And do any of these peptides come as creams or as pills or anything like that?
If you look online, you can probably find a version of everything. But if we're talking about actual legitimate formulations, the best example of a topical cream is going to be GHKCU. And this is interesting because this is a copper tripeptide that has been found to decrease in expression and concentration as we age. But when it is applied topically, it's highly effective. Topically. So putting on a cream on your face, all right? It's been found to be extremely beneficial in regenerating the quality of skin. So complexion, all right? Increasing the amount of collagen and elastin, the things that we need to keep our faces taut and youthful, the things that people will pay lots of money to go get lasered to get improvements. Not that it's a replacement for that, but that's a topical form that, believe it or not, you could go out and buy today, because topical GHKCU is regulated very differently than the injectable form.
Is it expensive?
Usually.
Growing up, I thought all these sort of anti-aging creams were bullshit. But you're telling me that this has actually been associated with improving signs of aging.
I will tell you this. When I was going through college and medical school, I was the biggest skeptic. I did not believe any of the health or wellness claims that we saw coming out at the time. And again, that was at a time where we were getting bombarded with stuff about the Atkins diet and this, that, or the other. But then all of a sudden, you start having patients come back to you and they're testifying as the benefits they've seen from these things. You start to actually look at the biochemistry behind them. You're like, oh, there's a lot of science backing this up. This isn't just mumbo jumbo. And so, believe it or not, there are creams that can slow the process of aging, at least from a visual standpoint, when it comes to your skin. I have yet to figure out anything that, makes me as energetic as I was in my early 20s, but, I'm working on it.
But on that point of energy and cognition, if I wanted to become a better podcaster, and I sit here sometimes we do 2 in a day, which means I might sit here for 8 hours. Once we did, I think a couple of times we've done 3 in a day.
That's brutal.
Which is 12 hours of recording.
Yeah.
But what would you recommend if I was trying to improve my cognitive performance?
So again, as a physician who likes keeping my license, I wouldn't say necessarily recommend, but I would say if we're looking at how these medications have been used, and potentially one that may be legal again coming this July, pending what the FDA says, intranasal Cmax. And this was one that was originally studied actually in Russia many years ago. And what they found is that this 7 amino acid peptide, when it was administered after a TBI, so a traumatic brain injury, or acute injury, that patients tended to bounce back faster. Also, they saw evidence of it improving outcomes after stroke. And it also seems to upregulate the same sort of factors that help with cognition and with, connecting sentences and bits of data in your brain. And so it's also interestingly enough, one of the ones that is available, intranasally, because it goes through the mucous membranes and gets right where you need it. And so that's going to be a really, really fascinating compound to see back on the market. And then we can actually get more data regarding efficacy and across a wide population.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.